Welcome back to the Sad Dad Games podcast, where we talk about the saddest and daddest games out there. We are your hosts, Shan,
Eric,
Milk, Tucker,
and Emerlie.
Today we are going to talk about the Left Behind DLC in The Last of Us and the final chapter. We're doing it in that order so that we can pretend to be armchair philosophers at the end of this episode and really wax philosophical and over-intellectualize one of our favorite games.
We're all really smart people, is what. Yeah, we're
so
basically
smart.
geniuses. Yeah,
We can't not over-intellectualize what we talk about.
Yeah.
It's our way of feeling valuable and important, engaging with pedestrian entertainment like this. Just up at the top. Yeah, so let's just get into the Left Behind DLC. We're not going to focus on it as long as the final chapter today, but does anybody have any initial thoughts that they want to get out about this section?
I really like the way that they tell the story in it, part of it, because the Left Behind DLC takes place while Joel, if he gets stabbed with the rebar and he's sick, and it takes place while Ellie is trying to go out and find a med kit so she can suture him up. And then it also, in between those segments, there are flashbacks to a previous story in Ellie's life before she gets bitten and has to leave the Boston QZ to go on her big journey with Joel. And I really like how it switches back and forth between that part of like the part where she's with Joel in the mall, and then it flashes back to a different time where she is in a different mall with one of her friends. And it's a really good way to tell the parallels of those stories. So I really enjoyed the way that they told the story in this DLC chapter.
Yeah, I love the idea of, putting yourself in Ellie's shoes. She's probably thinking about that Riley story as she's in this mall looking for Joel, sutures for Joel. It's hard. It's like that flashback of, I was here a few months ago and my best friend didn't make it.
Just like the primary game itself, the design elements are so beautiful in this DLC. It takes you through a number of really cool locations that you've yet to experience. So you get to see more of how the apocalypse is played out, like in a mall setting. So we see the arcade and the carousel. And it's another chance for the developers and the designers to show off how much storytelling they can pack into the world around you without letting you encounter it at your own speed and your own pace, without having to heavy hand it or give you exposition. You can just explore another really fleshed out design area, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out as well, that I definitely realized just from the beginning of this section that they clearly put a lot, like as much as I felt when we were in the sewers, it felt like they put a lot of effort into over designing these set pieces so that it was just overfilled with detail more than some other sections of the game where you're just passing through.
Yeah. I think the arcade, we might get to this, but I think the arcade sequence, that's my very most favorite part. It's so good. And there's so much great detail in it too. But the other thing that on a selfish way that I think is my other favorite thing, you asked us what our favorite thing was from this, but I think my other favorite takeaway was it's really rare in video games for us to get to see them flesh out a story between two teenage girls. That is not a common thing in video games, right? Not historically and even since. And so the fact that the major narrative of the DLC revolves around these two teenage girls and really fleshes out their relationship, I find both unique and brave, and it's told beautifully.
It seems like the kind of thing an executive would never greenlight.
Oh yeah, no way.
As you can
know
see,
who our clientele is.
As you can see, based on the people participating in this podcast, a lot of adult men like to play video games, and they're not usually very concerned with,
we demand
the stories between teenage girls. Yes.
We demand that only we are reflected in the gameplay and narrative.
Yeah. I can't empathize with anyone unless they are also a 30-something.
Why Joel serves me so well. He's invincible. He's powerful.
This is man. That's me. I'm surviving the apocalypse. I am Joel.
I think we established in a previous episode that none of us are Joel. We are all random zombies. Yes.
We're patient zero.
patient zero or standing right.
No, you're the rat king.
Yeah. We ate the grain that gave us the fungus.
As uninvolved in the grander story as you can possibly be. That's where we are.
Kids, go gluten free. That's how you become not a zombie.
Wheat will give you zombie virus.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Yep.
All right, so we start the Left Behind section. Ellie is in Fedra in the quarantine zone, after having been left there by Marlene. It seems that she still has some kind of communication and connection with her. Now, where is Ellie story-wise, character-wise at the beginning of this? And what is the character journey that she needs to make through this section?
I think she's just trying to keep her head down. She meets up with Riley a little bit later. And they're chatting around and she's like, I have to go back. I don't have any more chances at this place. So I think that maybe she's gotten into a little bit of trouble in the Fedra kind of military camp there. And I think she's just trying to keep her head down and do what she's supposed to do and get through day to day, right? She's just sort of coasting through this situation until she figures out what she's supposed to do next.
Oh, no, I think it's just interesting. Like, she seems to know she was placed there by Marlene for some reason, not really sure, and just feels like she's just in a holding pattern until something happens. At least that's the feeling I got kind of at the beginning. Just not really sure what to do, where to go, but I know I have to go through this Fedra school and following that kind of Fedra school path to where next I'm going to be a soldier. Maybe I'm going to be on a wall, or maybe I'm going to have sewer duty, whatever that looks like.
So one way to think about character journeys is it's often defined by what their wants and needs are. And at the beginning of this, she's alone. Riley left her. She doesn't know why or where or if she'll ever see her again. And right now, she's just isolated and alone. What she wants is Riley. And what we're going to see throughout this section is how does her want get supplanted by her need? And by the end of it, we see that what she needs is a reason to continue going. And that plays into her overall character journey in the full game, in my opinion. All right, so Riley has bailed for the Fireflies. She hasn't told Ellie, correct?
Yeah, it seems like she just bailed. And I got the show and the DLC maybe a little bit mixed up. But I think that in the game, she doesn't know she's going to join the Fireflies. She's just sneaking around, and Marlene is stalking her and says, hey, you're pretty good at sneaking around. Want to join the Fireflies?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think she left for the Fireflies. I think she just left and then stumbled into the Fireflies.
Yeah, I think in the game it mentioned that she was following some Fireflies and that's how she was just sneaking around. And
it's a little different in the TV show, to that point. Now, Riley, throughout this DLC, she starts by saying she's playing to the Fireflies' ideology and she wants to have that greater purpose. And by the end of it, challenged and confronted by Ellie of why is she really doing this? It's that she wants to have a family. She wants to belong somewhere. And I really feel like this is just a relatable concept that some of us get pulled into communities or groups or with the wrong friends, not because that's where we already are ideologically or character-wise, but we just need a place to belong. We want to join first and ask questions later.
I said, just going back to the needs versus wants and where they meet up, it seems like the Fireflies is what does that for Riley. Is she needs a family. She wants family, and that all gets mixed together in with the Fireflies, and that's where she finds her place in her story.
Mm-hmm. So Riley has come back for one night to see Ellie, and she's withholding the information that she plans on bailing forever. But she keeps hinting at it with subtext of her dialogue. And it's obvious she's just trying to give Ellie one good last night before she does the unthinkable to Ellie, which is leave her alone. And so we go on this journey to the abandoned mall. And I really want to get into what does everybody's favorite section of the mall. What does the mall do to this story?
Luke stole my answer. I really like the part in the arcade.
Oh, the arcade.
Yeah, I think that it's, for obvious reasons, big fan of video games, so it's fun to look for little Easter eggs and stuff. But Riley and Ellie, they go all over this mall and they're doing fun little things. They're riding merry-go-round, they do all sorts of stuff. But then there's a point where they go to an arcade. And I love that part because, for a couple of reasons, because they have a really nice moment together that just shows how strong their bond is, how much they mean to each other. And I really enjoy that moment. So there's this game that, like this arcade cabinet, that in the main story a few times Ellie's been like, oh, I really wish I could have played that game. And it's something that she's really interested in. So they go to it, and for a minute you're like, oh, she's going to get to play the game. And then they try to plug it in and it's just broken.
Wow.
And Ellie's like, oh man, I thought I was going to get to play. And then Riley goes, you are, close your eyes. So Ellie closes her eyes, and then Riley describes it. And then you do a backflip, and the character punches this guy, and they're coming at you with this attack. You got to block. And while Ellie has her eyes closed and Riley is describing what's going on, you hear like video game sound effects and fists punching and this and that. And that I was going to say, and you can see like the lights from the screen. If the game had actually been on, the flashing lights on Ellie's face, but you see those lights in real life to really visually paint this picture of what's going on in Ellie's imagination. I thought it was just a nice moment to something that was really important to Ellie, that she got to not experience maybe in its purest form, but maybe something arguably that is better and was more meaningful than actually getting to play the normal game. So I like that moment.
It's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the exact same arcade game. It's the console of the turning, right?
In the show, it's Mortal Kombat.
In the show, it's Mortal Kombat, but in the video game, it's the turning, right? And that's the same one in both locations, right?
Yeah, I forget what it's called. It's the same. So her and Joel find an arcade cabinet called Ellie's. Yeah, and I forget what it's called. I think it's called the Turning. And Ellie's, oh, I wish I could have played that game. And then now when you play the DLC, you get it's the same one. So yeah, you're right.
It's the same one, yeah. And it's called the Turning because I remember thinking, oh, there's some really obvious foreshadowing going on right there. Because the character on the arcade console the character on the arcade console, first of all, looks like Riley. But she's got like Wolverine claws. I just pulled up a picture of it just to double check. But yeah, it looks just like Riley on the console, and she's got Wolverine claws like on both hands, and she looks hardcore. But the name of the game, everything about the design of it, yeah, it's certainly, spoiler alert, it gives you a lot of foreshadowing.
Your point, this is the same arcade that, was it in Billstown that we see this later and it's turned off and she starts talking about it? And
yeah, I think it's before we get to Billstown, right? Okay. We actually see that.
It's somewhere, it's somewhere near that part of the game, but yeah.
But I loved that detail.
They did so many excellent things in this mall sequence, but I have to call out that in the DLC, I really loved the lighting. They're already masters of this in the entire game, but like how the mall is pretty big, but they guide you around with all these perfectly lit areas with neon lights so that you're being guided where to go next. Like I just beelined it straight for the arcade without actually thinking that's where I was going to go. It's like they are
lights.
They're exactly. It's like you are a bug being drawn to like the light, and when you're lost, look for the light.
There you go.
And
the firefly.
Okay, in the dream.
I'm anti-firefly. We'll get to that.
Anti-institutionalist, Shan.
You guys took all the good parts, so I'll just throw in one of the little Easter eggs that you see all throughout both of the games is the apocalypse happens at the end of September, I believe. So every now and then you see Halloween. It's not super present because it wasn't actually into October, but you can see like sometimes you're walking through an office space and you'll see some little Halloween decorations, or you walk through a store and Halloween stuff. So I love how in this DLC they try on the Halloween masks and they're in that store together. I like that little
I'm
Easter
sure
egg.
that stuff was set up in July.
Halloween towns popping up all over the place.
Right?
Well, there's an abandoned store in the mall.
What are you going to do with it?
It's now a trend to start celebrating Halloween after July 4th. Apparently that's a thing now.
Oh,
that's the new
found that out
thing.
this year.
It's already Christmas at Lowe's. It's already been
I'm okay with
Halloween
it.
at Lowe's for 2 months, and now it's Christmas.
Maybe I'm shifting gears here a little too abruptly, but my favorite part, I love the arcade, but the photo booth
Yeah.
specifically hit me hard
Oh.
here. And I think it's because throughout the whole game, we've talked about Ellie not having a childhood. Just the whole mall sequence in general, I think is like, I'm thinking, oh, Ellie is having a normal teenage girl time in this mall. And it was just captured in the photo booth, making silly faces with friends. And just the optional, hey, how do you want to do this? You can change the faces in the middle of taking pictures. But then it abruptly comes to an end when you can't print the pictures. So it's just like normal childhood. This is fun. This is awesome. And then wah, wah, wah. You're in the apocalypse and nothing's working.
Right.
No
Tucker,
internet either.
You hit exactly what I wanted to get at. We have the carousel, arcade, joke book, photo booth, Halloween store, dancing, and water guns. That's exactly what I think the point of this section is, to illustrate that this is the last moment of her experiencing her true childhood. And we're about to enter the loss of innocence phase after Riley. She experiences her most personal loss. And that's when she goes on her most harrowing journey with Joel, where she just keeps losing a part of her soul to these increasingly tense situations where she has to do worse and worse things to survive.
This is what I think the whole series does so well. And I articulated this in a previous episode. But the reason why we love this story so much, or at least the reason I love this story so much, is it's a very human story. And it happens to be in a world that has zombies and all these other dangers and stuff. But at the core of the story, we're not telling a story about zombies. We're telling a story about these very real humans, these people. And the whole DLC is devoid of combat. Unlike when you're with Joel, we are constantly killing bandits and raiders and pedophiles and clickers. Like you are
Cannibals.
Cannibals, right? All the good stuff. All good things.
The big five. Yeah.
Right, big five. Big five is what I like to call it. I always call them the big five.
Also, they took the two worst things and they did it at the same time. The pedophilia cannibal.
It's hard to be worse than a cannibal pedophile. Like it's the worst of humanity.
The
We've already
very
talked about
dregs
David,
of humanity. The lowest of low, bottom of the barrel. But this
He's also a cult leader. You guys forgot the cult leader.
Cult leader. We
And
forgot.
he's just the worst. He's just the worst.
Sorry,
yeah.
in the show, yeah.
Well,
But anyway, that's what the whole game does so well, and that's all the DLC focuses on is the human element of it, right? There's no combat. You're not Ellie and Riley battling off zombies or clickers. You're just having a very human moment, which the whole series does so well. But I think it was smart that the DLC focused on the humanity of these people, which makes it all the more heartbreaking, right? That's why you feel for these characters. That's why all of them, you're personally invested in their humanity.
So this is what Stephen King does so well, and why his older horror used to succeed so well, is because he goes off on these like long backstories of characters to make them endearing and to really flesh out what's important, so that you're invested in the character, you care about them, which increases the stakes when they are in these dark situations. And to have true horror, you have to care that the character could be killed. And that's what The Last of Us really does well with every single character, even down to Tess and Marlene. In some way, I care about them. Not as much as Ellie and Joel. If they die, they have to die to serve the greater story.
Wow, Machiavelli over here.
Remember, Shan doesn't like fireflies. So
Jeez.
And not with them.
Shan, sounds like you hate women, is what I'm getting at.
that's what I got out of that.
Right, Ellie.
You hate women, you hate institutions,
Yeah.
But also cannibal.
You
So,
hate anybody who died.
I'm also
No good
anti-purpose.
hatred. Does that help?
yes, a little bit.
I'm anti-pedophile cannibal.
It's just a gimme.
I'm
Everybody's
alright.
anti that.
I don't know. I saw that Eric seemed to be okay with David. He was most excited about that section.
Yeah, totally. Me and David were like this.
I really connect with David's character.
Oh,
I
David.
too love to eat people.
Be David.
David.
You, David.
We're all split on him. So we're in the arcade, and that's where they have this really incredible character moment. But then Ellie decides, hey, I want to leave. Let's continue this later. Why does Ellie decides she wants to call the night at that point. Do you think there's anything going there, or is it just to move the plot along?
I think for me, it was a couple of reasons. I touched on it earlier where I think that she's on her last chance at this Cedra camp. She's like, if she gets in trouble again, I don't know, they'll kick her out or whatever the consequences. So I think it's a desire. She doesn't want to get in trouble again. Also, she doesn't know that Riley is going to be leaving like forever. The Fireflies have asked her to, be shipped off to somewhere else. So in her mind, we can come out again another night or something. She doesn't know that this is it. And so I think that it's a desire to not get in trouble, and probably still a little bit of residual feelings of her kind of being mad at Riley, because it seems like when Riley left, she said some unkind things and then ran off. And so that might play into it a little bit as Ellie's feeling a little frustrated with herself.
I think, okay, first of all, they're subtextually the entire time challenging each other. And I think Ellie's challenging her to find out, what is this new dynamic? What are you doing to me? You're not being honest. And so she keeps challenging her. I believe at the end of this sequence, when they pull away from the arcade, she looks at Riley and there's this like moment of will they, won't they? And I think Riley breaks first. And that's when Ellie decides we should just go for the night. She keeps wanting it to escalate to something more, and they both are tugging at that. But when it seems like Riley doesn't want to reciprocate, I don't want to play games. I just need to go
I got
back.
that vibe too, because there's a handful of moments up until there where they're tiptoeing around. Are we friends or are we something more? Certainly, it felt like that from Ellie's perspective. That's where we were tiptoeing. Maybe she didn't feel spurned, but she certainly didn't feel as encouraged in that moment. And that could have been another reason why she might have shut it down at that part.
It felt like there's this will they, won't they moment, which I think perfectly encapsulates that kind of awkward teenage romance feeling. But I think for Elle, the way I took it is Ellie, she's in this moment. She's had this kind of really cool experience, imagining kind of romantic, playing this game. And I think there's this part of her is, wait a minute, Riley hurt you. And you have to take a step back. That's the way that moment played out for me. And that's where she's, you know what, I got to go. I can't advance this anymore tonight. I need some time to think about it.
There's this micro expression that Ellie does, like when they're done with the arcade, where she glances down at Riley's lips for half a second. And I was like, that is so human. I remember being a teenager, and like when you think something might happen and you want something to happen, for some reason, you look to the other person's lips to see what they're telegraphing, to see if they're giving you an opening and if you can take it. And when she was denied in that moment, she's like, nothing is changing. Let's just call it. That's my opinion. And then they keep trying to prolong the night. Riley runs off. Ellie chases after her. Then they have an encounter with water guns. I need to know who won and who lost the encounter.
I won. Are you kidding me? Both times.
Of course.
I had to, because behind the playing, I had to move
bad at
everything.
games.
I had to move it all to the super light setting because I needed to blow through it as fast as I could. And the stupid camera and auto aim boned me every single time. It was infuriating.
Tucker's video games.
I was
all games.
I am
all
the
I
worst
heard
state
is
player
that
in the
Tucker
world.
failed on the easiest setting. That's all I heard.
That's exactly what I said.
I also lost. It's about 50-50 for me, but it was like dead heat up until the last shot, and she just snuck right up on me. It was
I didn't turn
infuriating.
around. I win. I played a wit.
It was more like pumping the water gun, and she like bum rushed me.
Luke doesn't lose competitions. He wins then, or he quits.
All right. Then they continue pushing each other. They're getting closer and closer to honesty in this moment. More subtext, more subterfuge. And then finally, I believe this is when Riley reveals that what she keeps hinting at, it's like that she wants Ellie to be the one that acts first and says that she wants her to stay. She knows from the beginning of this DLC that if Ellie were to ask, that she would stay, but she doesn't want to manipulate her into giving that response. She just wants her to take the action on her own, right? Is that what everybody else got out of it?
Yeah, I'd say that's the feeling I got for sure. Is I want this from you, but I don't want to tell you to do it. I want you to want it too.
I would say like the without manipulating a part, I want to challenge a little bit because it felt like this whole night had that as an undertone agenda for her. So I think there was some manipulation of like,
bit.
hey, yeah, look how
Okay.
fun that we would be together if you just ask and I'll stay.
Right now, her hierarchy is Firefly's ideology. And second, it's in her head, she probably wants Ellie more, but she needs something from Ellie to decide that she will get more out of choosing that path than choosing the Fireflies. And so she keeps trying to prompt her to say it. And the second that she did and they kiss, it's, yeah, okay, let's run away together. And then we have a parkour chase through the mall, which is my favorite part of the whole DLC.
We
Agree or disagree?
didn't even say why
Parkour.
they did. They just felt like doing some parkour. they kiss and they were playing loud music, and then a bunch of infected show up, which is I thought was a great detail because it wasn't just a bunch of infected show up because the story says that there needs to be some tension right here, something good happened, and so something bad needs to happen. It was like they were listening to music really loud inside of an abandoned mall and dancing around and being fun teenagers. And then when the infected show up, I was like, "What'd you expect?" That was the cynical part of me that was just like, of course that was going to happen.
Grow up, kids. Yeah. Don't
Grow
you
up,
know
kids.
where you
I'm a
are?
grumpy old
Dumb
man.
teenagers.
Yeah. Dumb
Is
teenagers
this a
Get off my
loud-
mom.
playing their loud boombox music.
But
That's when
boomers
we-
descended on the mall. Turn down the music.
Okay, boomers. Eat your brains.
So yeah, two of my favorite parts. The parkour chase is probably my favorite. Second, because I dread it, I love in the parallel mall sequence. I love the room where you have to get gasoline from the truck while stalkers are in there.
That part is
Might-
horrid.
Might be the most successfully horrifying part of the game for me. Played it so many times, I know how to play it, and I still dread it. And this time I got there with 4 bullets, and I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I will say to that part that I think that running the parallel stories where it's like you're in the happy mall with Riley and then you're in the sad mall where Joel is sick and you have to fight off infested and some, people that are trying to get you. But I agree that part where she's trying to get the gasoline to open up the door and if there's water, so your movement is limited and you're used to playing as Joel in combat scenarios where if something goes wrong, you can punch your way out of it, but that doesn't work as Ellie. And so if things go south, it's much harder to physically brute your way through it. And so that I agree that probably is one of the most, the more horror feeling parts of the game as it feels it's very tense and very scary because you're not this big, strong, punchy Joel guy. You're a 14-year-old girl who's got to deal with similar trials, but isn't as physically strong.
Yes,
Hey.
but at least you don't have to keep making shivs.
That is,
That's
yes.
one thing I
Oh,
hate
yeah.
about Joel is I love to use the shivs and
Yeah.
you have to keep making them. But with Ellie, at least you get this reusable pocket knife.
She's got the immortal switchblade. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
straw poll. Other than the Rat King, who is the worst enemy type?
Worst enemy type.
Because I think I am
I think those
most
stalkers.
terrified. Stalkers, I think, horrifying or enemy type.
I have a hard time with bloaters when there's more than one of them. One bloater, when it's bloaters mixed with smaller zombies where it's trying to divide my
Right.
attention, that's probably the thing that I have the hardest time with. But I think that the stalkers are the scariest. Except
I
for
think the
Rat King.
stalkers, I think the stalkers are the most successfully horrifying, the most successfully scary. But I agree with Eric,
Horrible.
especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty setting, like the bloater with multiple other around it's so hard to be able to prioritize and do things in the right order.
Okay, in the underground in Salt Lake City, I always forget that there's 2 bloaters.
That's what I was talking about.
So I
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
one on the first one, and I'm left with just this terrible ammo for the second. It totally got on top of me. I didn't restart the encounter. I needed to suffer from my choices. But
You
those
done got bum rushed by a
they
bloater.
all
Classic.
descended on me.
Oh, see, I did amazingly well this time because I did remember there's 2 bloaters. And so I saved all of my little cane grenades and Molotovs for that second one where there's more around them. And it was just amazing because my nail bombs.
Okay, also if
blew
you're
most of
playing
them
on
up.
the easiest difficulty
Okay.
setting. Girl.
Auto aim.
Auto aim. Okay. Combat was
Did
different.
you have it in slow motion too? When you pull up the gun, it puts
Oh.
everything into slow motion.
After the Ellie encounter with the squirt gun, I'm like, no, done with that garbage. Combat is normal.
All right, so they get chased through the mall and they get bit and they have their final conversation. Now I already discussed this at the top, but I believe Ellie's character journey is really summed up by Riley's final speech that she gives her. That even if you have 1 second, 1 minute, 1 day, you just keep fighting for every minute.
I wrote it down. I think it's so beautiful. Can
Yeah.
I read it?
Go for it. Yes.
I wrote because when they're sitting there and they're both bit and they're just in this really intense moment, Riley says something to Ellie, and I just think it's such a cool little mini monologue. She says that there are a million ways we should have died before today, and a million ways we could die before tomorrow. But we fight for every second we get to spend with each other, whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days. We don't give that up. And I love how while Riley is giving that little speech to Ellie, it cuts back to the present day with Ellie and Joel. And so Ellie is patching up Joel. And I think it really cements this idea that Riley taught this lesson to Ellie, and she's using it to help her current situation with Joel, that she's using that to lift herself up and inspire her. And it, like Shannon said, has set her on that track to be the person who could do this journey with Joel.
Ironically, it contradicts where she ends up by part 2, where she doesn't have a purpose to keep going, if not vengeance, but just she has decided in part 2 that she would have rather given up her life for a greater cause, which is catalyzed by her encounter with Sam, I believe, but let's get back to that later.
I was going to say the parallel with Joel is obvious in that moment to me as well, that Joel makes the decision, which we'll get to ultimately, that Ellie is more important than anything, and he would do anything to fight and kill for another day, another moment to take care of his girl. And yeah, it foreshadows also some pretty terrible things you're capable of doing, because in the DLC, it's really noble what they're doing, and it's really sweet, and it's telling a very nice story. But ultimately, that same motivation can be used to do some pretty horrible things.
We get to see both the best and the worst of taking that idea to its most extreme ends. All right. Any other thoughts about Left Behind?
It's so beautiful.
It's
It's
short.
short and it's just right. Like, it didn't need to be longer than it was. I think it's just the right amount of length. The gameplay's great. The design's beautiful. Great.
I love when people are like, Ellie's gay? In the second game, they were like, what?
You didn't play
How
the
dare
DLC.
you?
I totally did
Yeah.
that because I didn't play the DLC until
Oh, no.
And then I was like, I didn't know. And then I played the DLC and was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It was there all along.
Who
Yeah,
knew?
I was
Yeah.
like, this is not at all surprising. Like, were all of you playing the game with your eyes closed?
Sorry, we don't have the gator Luke has.
Wow.
I had my eyes closed and my flashlight turned
Yeah.
off because
Yeah.
I can't see them.
It was
They
too
can't
scary.
see me.
Yeah.
I played the whole game in listening mode. I never left listening mode.
I also, last thing before we move on from that, this time while I was running away from a beached encounter, I jumped back accidentally into the electrified water. And I've never seen that animation before, and they really draw it out. She like,
Oh my gosh.
pulls his
I've
boat-
seen that animation
cartoon
before either.
tasers.
Please describe it to me in excruciating detail.
They really draw it out.
for 8 seconds. And she just keeps
Gosh, that's horrifying.
Okay.
really worth it. I had,
Everybody replay this chapter and throw yourself into the electrified water just to watch Jeff's kiss.
all that happened. Obviously, the only thing you're supposed to do in that encounter is throw a brick and then throw a Molotov cocktail. but they don't go down as easily. And this one clicker escapes and he chases me into the water
Fantastic.
because I think I'm out of ammo at that point. So I'm trying to draw an arrow on him, but Ellie draws the bow so slowly that he got
Weak
on top
arms,
of me.
man. Weak arms.
With her tiny 14-year-old arms.
Gotta work those tries and buys. Get that.
David didn't get you, so this one's gonna get you.
All right, let's transition to the final chapter. We have just left the David situation. I think we're back in spring by this point. We have left winter and they have entered Salt Lake City. We're all Utah
Shout out.
natives, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I lived for a while. I didn't grow up there, but I lived in Utah from the time when I was like 12 until I was 25.
Before that, you were a city kid, right? Who used to steal from the local Walmart.
What? No, I did that while I was in Utah. I didn't steal anything ever. No, I've never stolen
Kids don't
anything.
steal. It's
I
bad.
don't steal. I did steal one time and I got in a lot of trouble and it cost me a lot of money. But that's not the reason you shouldn't steal. You shouldn't steal because it's wrong and bad. But no, I grew up in Illinois and Arizona and then I moved to Utah when I was like preteen.
Okay. I don't know why I had to call that out. I just
Yeah, that was a weird
it's
detail.
always
Thanks for
funny.
thanks
It's
for
always
putting that
funny
in.
to me. Any
There's
chance
so
that I
many
can-
Salt Lake City details, though, as we
Yeah.
pull into Utah that I'm obsessed with. I don't think I paid as much attention to this the first time around, but I get all giddy being a Utah native, growing up in Salt Lake. Did any of you have this impression driving on I-15 into
Every
Salt
time.
Lake? You're like, yeah, holy crap. Salt Lake has turned into a jungle paradise. There, like, it's so green. There are trees everywhere. It is no longer the desert, and it's not the salinic hellscape that Salt Lake could turn into when the lake dries up.
I was wondering, why are there so many trees on that mountain over there?
So many trees,
Yeah.
right?
It's because
super
there's no more
unrealistic.
people keeping all the inversion in the valley.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with Luke.
Suffocating. Yeah.
I really like this part because it really is like, it sure wasn't as interesting for people who haven't lived in Utah, and I haven't lived in any of the other places in the game. I'm sure they did their homework there, but when you're coming up to the part of Utah, I've been here in real life, and they very clearly
Okay.
did their homework and made it look like that part of downtown Salt Lake. So it's fun Salt Lake City is not often represented in video games. And so it's fun to be like, hey, I lived there.
In pop culture, unless it's the butt of a joke. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have that
Always.
big of a sociocultural presence. So the fact that it's the centerpiece for the final chapter of this game is fun.
How
for me.
people in New York feel all the time when they play games. I've been there.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, people are finally going to like Utah.
We love you, Utah. We're just
We're still joking. Probably just gave him fodder.
Say, I think I had the opposite reaction because
Hmm.
there's the tunnel and there are like no tunnels in Utah. And I'm like, come on,
one part.
Naughty Dog, you couldn't have done a little bit of research, but I understand you need to go in there to see infected, blah, 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 blah.
Well, there's a small tunnel underneath. This is where I imagine it. It's underneath the convention center where you
Okay,
get to drive
it's like-
underneath. That's the tunnel.
That's
Yeah.
the tunnel. That's the one.
Oh,
I figured it had to be
Yeah.
that.
I think Temple Square actually does have a bunch of tunnels underneath. I've heard about those.
Yeah, but not a
those
road.
were definitely not the tunnel spirit drive.
No, I've heard they like drive carts down there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like a golf cart, I think. Not like
You could go like this and touch either side of the
Yeah.
So you can like shuffle around religious
Also-
leaders underneath the ground.
when Joel is helping Ellie up one of the walls, the Utah tourism poster that
Mhm.
has the great arch on it.
Yeah.
And I loved that detail. That was very clear.
Yeah.
Also, the giraffe that they encounter. I don't know if we're going to talk about the giraffe, but it was
We
one
are.
of my favorite details. I was like, that giraffe straight up wandered out of Hogle Zoo.
He's
I've
straight
seen
up
that
did it.
giraffe. I've pet that giraffe in real life.
I've said that giraffe. I've said that giraffe.
Let's see. Obviously, they put the temple in there. It's about the only thing they got correct about downtown Salt Lake.
Hey, they have the church office building in there. I just know
They
because
did.
it's
Yep.
my wife
They did in
works
the
there.
show.
Yeah, and I took a picture
in
of
the
it.
game?
It's in the game because I took a picture of it and sent it
is.
to my wife who works in that building. And I'm like, hey, your work's
Used to
here.
work there.
I kind of did too.
Yeah, briefly. I was actually usually in a satellite building where they kept the unmentionables,
What does that mean?
undesirables. Yeah. Sorry, wrong word. Before we rewind and start talk about all the important character moments, I also want to point out that we are just now getting a hockey team. And they, in the game, had a hockey team. Did anybody see the
Yeah, they
poster?
did. Yeah, they did. And I geeked out because I thought the prescience of Naughty Dog to give Salt Lake a hockey team, or the audacity of Naughty Dog to not do your research and know that Utah doesn't have a hockey team.
Especially
I went back
20
and
years
forth.
ago.
We weren't even close
Hey,
to having an NHL.
We have the
vibe.
Grizzlies. There's the Grizzlies. It's a minor league.
Yeah. And
Okay,
we have the
it doesn't-
Olympic Oval that everyone goes skating at. We have
The Olympic
ice
Oval is
skating.
awesome.
Yeah, but it's in
Yeah.
West
Olympic
Valley. It's a
Oval.
little scary to
Yeah,
go
don't
there.
go to West
Also,
Valley.
the Utah Snake.
Yeah,
of all-
snakes. Okay. Terrible name, right? It
Terrible
gets to the ethos of the wildlife part of Utah that I guess there's something to that, but equally terrible with your idea of the Utah Yeti.
I did a bad job with that. Yeah. But at the time of us recording this episode, we're still going to be the hockey club. It's terrible. Ray Smith ran a Twitter poll to try and poll Utah for a new hockey name. And I was super on board with the Utah Yeti. I think Yeti's just because of the alliteration, because you've got you and yeah, Utah Yeti. It's so
We'll
good.
say this one more time. Yetis are in the Himalayas. They don't go where winter is.
I have to say, the Wasatch Mountains are the Himalayas of Utah.
Yeah.
Maybe the Yeti's like
Shan,
to visit
is
Utah.
Himalayas
You don't know.
wherever they're
Yeah.
from.
or the Blizzard. I was on board with that. But Utah Snakes, terrible hockey name. So
Okay,
maybe
what
they were
animal
really
instead
smart.
of snakes?
Yeti.
Yetis.
No, like a real animal.
Yeah,
You
Brian,
had
sure.
it as
Real
an animal.
animals.
Emerlie, you don't know.
It really
I'm
plays
sorry.
into the superstitious nature of living in Utah.
What,
Man.
and Sam Hill's a Yeti? Do you guys know what that is?
Red versus blue?
Yes.
No,
And
nailed
Sam
it.
Hill's a puma? What, like the shoe company? No, like a puma. It's like a big cat. You're making that up. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it's a real animal.
Hey,
I can quote that whole episode.
Chupa thingy. How about that?
And that
Man,
cat's
red
got a
versus
ring to it.
blue. Blast from the past.
Mm.
All right. So let's reset. So we enter Salt Lake and we see that Ellie is despondent after David, even though it's been probably months. Yeah, they've crossed from Colorado to Salt Lake. Winter has passed and she's still shell-shocked, traumatized. What do you love about like how this is acted out, how it's portrayed?
Yeah, I wanted to say something to that point because their communication between Joel and Ellie at this point, however much time has elapsed, seems so much more fluid, right? They seem more at ease and able to actually express real things. Certainly Joel, right? Ellie maybe was less guarded before, but now that Ellie's had this traumatic experience, I think the temptation would have been for her to all of a sudden put up more guardrails. I think Joel does a good job of being more open in his communication, but you just see this ease of communication between the two of them. The other thing I thought about watching these first couple scenes with them as you enter the city, I mean, I don't know if it's just me or if it's because Ellie seems more mature, but she definitely looked more mature to me in this last chapter, as if like she's more adult or grown up, or maybe they animated her slightly more mature, but she looks and feels so much more mature to me now than she did a couple months prior, you know, just before the David incident.
In the DLC, she similarly felt younger. And
Yeah.
I think assuming that they use the same model just to not waste the resources, my assumption is they do the same trick that they do in television where they either put your hair down or they put your hair back and it's all about the costume that helps you age or feel younger. Every time they do cherry piece, like in a TV show, go back 10 years, it's, oh, your hair's down and it covers your forehead. You don't see that your hairline's receding, stuff like that. Little tricks to make you seem younger and or older.
So I really love one of my favorite little subtle moments is in this part. And they do it a lot more in the second game. But in this game, it's when you're going through Salt Lake City and you're in one of the buildings and you're playing as Joel and you go to do one of the very basic tasks, one of the mechanics, and you go up to a wall and you prep yourself to prop Ellie up. And you only see him up against the wall, just the same as usual. And so he goes to do it and she doesn't show up. And you're like, wait a minute, like, where's Ellie? What's happening? And you look over and she's just sitting there and she's not paying attention. She's probably dissociating. But it just, it was such a shock to me to have a basic mechanic in the game be disrupted like that. You see that a lot more in the second game when you're in the apartment and you got to use the workbench. That's one of the best moments too. But I just really loved the first time. It really threw me off, and I'll always remember that.
My favorite subversion is actually part 2, pushing the cart and then encountering a shambler or something in the arcade.
Oh no, I hate that part.
That one gets me every time.
I hate the one when you're going through the wall and you get ripped out of the wall. Oh, I hate that one.
I haven't played the second game in a while. I played it like around the time when the PS5 came out. It was one of the first games I got, and I haven't played it since because it was so emotionally draining that I haven't been brave enough to do it. So I don't remember any of that. I need to play it again.
I think I've played it like 4 times, and I just barely replayed it a couple months ago. It was very cathartic for me, so I love that game.
Weirdly, all of you have said that it drains you, but for Emerlie and me, it for some reason makes us feel stronger. And it speaks
think there's some
cathartic.
interesting psychology going on there as to why that fuels your fire.
We are energized by satisfying character-driven stories. These people, burdened by their own lives, it just weighs down the anxieties that they already have.
I'm a massive fan of Joss Whedon's work, the Whedonverse. I'm obsessed with Buffy and Angel, and you've got Firefly and Dollhouse, and just all. I pretty much have watched everything that he's made, and
Firefly.
I get some
Love
weird sick.
Firefly.
Yes. I get some weird sick satisfaction off of the fact that he kills his main characters. And I love it. It's terrible. All of these shows, he makes you fall in love with these characters, and then the ones that you love the most, he kills them off. It's nothing. He just tosses them aside. And I hate it, but it's cathartic. And I think that's why I love The Last of Us, especially the second one, because when I'm very extra stressed, I've been telling Shan, I text him, I'm like, I got to play the game again. I need it. I need to release some of this stress and tension that I have and just work through my emotions that way.
You need something worse than your actual life to distract you from your actual life. Always going to win.
Well, it's
everyone's dying around me? That's fine. It's even
Normal
worse
life
for
isn't
these
so
guys.
bad.
Yeah, I can deal with my problems. At least
Maybe I will
Ellie.
shower tomorrow.
Not today, but
Not today.
No. They do a good job. I wanted to say one more thing about like this Ellie's PTSD before we move on. Because you mentioned like interrupting basic game mechanics in this and the next game. That's a really effective way. They do it with the sound design too. There's a couple of subtle moments where you would otherwise expect something to happen, and it happens in the sound. It happens in the music, where things get silent all of a sudden. And you don't know if something's wrong or something's about to happen. But it's a great subversion of, because a lot of the time in the game, there's always dialogue or footsteps walking or the sound of you echoing and talking to each other. And then there's the guitar music in the background. And there are a couple moments here in Salt Lake where all of that stops for a second. And that's really unnerving because almost the rest of the game, there's always some kind of audio reinforcement or feedback going on. So I think they do a great job. There's one other moment I'll mention later. I want to get back to a sound design moment of great subversion at the end of this chapter. But I just wanted to shout out that like little moments where they're telling you about their mental and emotional state, just subtly with the sound design.
Yeah, I don't know that this is a term, but I want to coin the term liminal headspace. Like we've talked about liminal space being like an otherwise normally occupied space, like a mall, and then showing nobody in it. And it becomes liminal and it becomes creepy because you've only ever seen it with people. Similar to your headspace, you either have diegetic sound going on with the foliage or anything that you're interacting with. When they pull it back, you didn't even know that you were hearing it the whole time until you're not hearing it. Similarly, like this is the first time I realized while I was playing the game, when you're down at your lowest amount of health and they put this like blurring effect around the edge of the screen, they also reduce the amount of sound you can hear. And so you can't hear people running up on you and stuff, but like it really increases the tension and stakes because it's like you suddenly are becoming disoriented in your in being able to geospatially place where the enemies are.
Yeah. And everything shrinks around you. And that's such an effective audio technique because otherwise in the game, you're able to really immediately locate where things are just in your headphones because they can sound so hard to either side. And in this, it's a great representation of shock. It's a great representation of trauma. You get those beer goggles on, you get that myopic vision, and it's just all of these other details that you're normally aware of. They're not important. They don't matter because they're not what you're dealing with. They're not what's weighing you down. And so just kudos to that design element. Great job with that.
All right. Okay. So during this opening sequence of the final chapter, Ellie encounters Giraffe from the Hogel Zoo as they have escaped and have been reclaimed by nature. And okay, I've played this game many times and I always kept telling myself the giraffes symbolize something, but I overthought it and I thought that the animal itself was symbolic. Now, what is everybody else's thoughts? What does this sequence add to the story?
I think it illustrates a moment of beauty and of childlike wonder for Ellie, because we've talked previously about how Ellie she's lost her innocence. She's done being a kid. She gets to still have little moments of that. And I think that this is a nice moment. And not only that, it's a moment that her and Joel get to share.
I think it was a very father-daughter moment. Like,
Super.
yeah, it's like Giraffe going to the zoo. That's a very parent-child thing to do. And to me, this is the closest they could get to in this world. Yeah.
It was super daddy-daughter day at Hogel Zoo vibe there.
I think this, to me, was the point in the game where I'm like, Joel's no longer the pragmatic Joel that we know. There's some dialogue where he opens up a little bit, but first of all, this is purely not about the mission. It's how it talks about you to spend your time looking at this view with the giraffes walking off in the distance for as long as you want before you progress the game. And I just thought it was really interesting of just, we have such an extreme pragmatic Joel throughout the entire game until David and Baby Girl, and all of a sudden Joel is Papa Joel and no longer superhero, all business Joel.
So what I got out of it this time, what finally clicked for me is up until this moment, Ellie is shell-shocked, she's despondent. And this is the moment where she proves that there's still something there. So I think that the giraffe sequence is really illustrating that there is a kid still inside of her that is worth saving. And once Joel sees that, he needs to be the father that can get her back to that point. And you see him continually coaxing her with dialogue and stuff to try to get them to open up. I'm really loving the TV show, how they expanded that triage sequence and that dialogue to say he almost took his life the day after Sarah. There was no reason, but then he realized we keep finding something to continue for. And he was never healed until Ellie came along. And the way they reveal it in the game is that you decide to shoot everybody. But the TV show, he uses dialogue before getting to that point.
Joel knows how to use his words in the TV show.
Well, because Ellie asks, so I guess time heals everything, right? And he said it wasn't time that did it. And he looked at her and they just had this quiet moment together.
Oh,
beautiful.
And I mentioned in a previous episode that Pedro Pascal did lose his mom to suicide. So I feel like that was very personal for him and a very raw scene for him to have to perform. And it just gets me in the heart.
He's America's dad. Are we okay saying that? That's what it feels like.
I don't think it's okay if it's just what it is, right? The internet had decided.
I think it seems like he has a special appeal to Gen Z kids that for some reason want an extremely strong.
He's America's zaddy. Yeah. Thanks, Gen Z, for that.
No, we try not to sexualize him anymore, by the way. That was a whole trend online, is that too many people were sexualizing him. And here he was doing all these amazing roles and finally catching his big break. And all people wanted to ask was oh, you're zaddy, right? It got a little bit out of hand. And then Yeah, a little demoralizing. And so a lot of people collectively decided, what is it on Community? Annie's young. We try not to sexualize her. That's how it is with Pedro now.
Just giving credit where credit is due. He's a beautiful man and he's very talented.
Yeah.
Then we get to the hospital after this. In the game, they go through the tunnel, they get caught by the fireflies, knocked out, and then you're suddenly abruptly in this hospital that doesn't exist in Utah. It's a Catholic hospital, is that right?
Yeah.
That would never exist in Utah.
And so why wasn't it just primary children's?
Right?
Yeah.
We already are famous for our child's hospital.
Naughty Dog dropped the ball a little bit on some of the locale research.
The Huntsman Cancer Institute would have been an obvious choice, or primary children's. Yeah, there were a couple obvious
is
choices that they should have
Also
ran.
located in just about the same location that they needed to get to.
That's the same
Yeah.
location.
Yeah. Come
Yeah.
on,
So-
come on, Naughty Dog.
We're
Calling you out, Naughty Dog.
Fix it.
We have our own
Yeah.
child's
Fix it
hospital.
now.
in the
I
want
remake.
another
You
remaster.
portray our city. You get the hospital right.
Before we get into the hospital, though, one moment I wanted to highlight is just the picture of Joel and Sarah. It's such a big moment where Joel says no to Tommy, but then says yes to Ellie. I wanted to know your guys' thoughts on why Joel accepted it this go around.
I think it's just an example of how much Ellie has softened Joel, right? Like he's not willing to accept it from Tommy, but he spends more time with Ellie. She kind of breaks down those walls. And then once she's done that, and he's willing to kind of take that part of his past along with him again. And he even, like, when he takes the picture, he even says something along the lines of, like, I guess you can't escape your past forever, run away from your past forever. And so Joel, like, admits that to himself, something that he's been doing and arguably still does afterwards, but that he's been doing ever since Sarah died.
I think that foreshadows the second game in its entirety, but that you can't escape your past. But yeah, he, like, at so many points in his life, he tries to escape his past. And this is the first time he's okay reopening the wound because he has something to replace the wound, right? It's not enough to just like belabor your grief until you've healed from it, but you need to fix it with something else, which is why he hasn't healed in 20 years and has gone down his dark path and tests and stuff, but nothing ever really replaces it until he get what he really needs is to be a father. That's like Tess wasn't enough for him to be healed. And that's why they never really connected or had a real relationship to its fullest. But he really comes into his own when he gets to be a father, where he finds fulfillment and he doesn't find it in anything else. And he will always be broken until he can be a father.
To me, yeah, I think just along those lines, for me, it was Joel's just accepting, being pragmatic about his emotional self. So that's something that his emotional self needed. It doesn't do anything for the world they live in. He can't use it as a resource, but his emotional self needed that resource, needed to bring the thought of Sarah back in his life to actually fully heal.
I can add in here. During that sequence where Ellie almost drowns, I think the gameplay during that sequence is really great. I love how throughout the game, we find moments where you're Joel and you're powerful and you can punch your way through people and clickers and that sort of thing. But in this sequence where you're in the bus and the water is rushing forward, part of the camera angle and the gameplay is very Tomb Raider-esque in that way. If any of you have played the Tomb Raider games, where you're in these dynamic fighting against the environment sequences, something about like the rushing water and you having to press the button at the right time. And it's all fruitless anyway, because you're fighting against nature and nature is going to win. There's something really powerful, I think, in the symbolism of that as well. He and Ellie both are fighting against the water and the bus in that sequence, right? It's not against clickers. It's not other people. It's fighting against the forces of nature. And I think the gameplay in that moment is really effective. You're powerless, even though they give you hope that you're going to get out or you're going to get out of this unscathed, all leading eventually to her almost drowning and Joel there trying to perform CPR before he gets knocked out. I think it's such an effective sequence to show that Joel and Ellie are together against the world be damned. But how do you fight against the forces of nature, right? How do you fight the inevitable power of that? I think that's really powerful.
I love the visual of after kind of the water calms and you're swimming towards Ellie, who's just motion water. It's just such a powerful visual.
Silhouetting her.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. So now we have awoken in the hospital, and Marlene has already taken Ellie. She has declared the moral savior, herself, the moral savior in this situation, and has put her under without her knowledge and has decided she's going to take her life to reverse engineer a cure to the cordyceps fungus and save humanity. And Joel's, what the heck did you say? I almost cursed in that moment and then realized it was going to sound sexist. So I didn't have anything else to replace it with.
Enough said.
He goes feral, as Tucker likes to put it. And in the show, he goes hypnotic.
Yeah. Feral Joel interrogating the one guard where he's, I don't have time for this, and just keeps on shooting him in the gut is just, oh.
He finds a placement for his voice that like really turns him into a fierce and formidable foe that like makes you feel powerful because you still think that you're him, even though you're patient zero. But then they give you more ammo than they've given you the entire game, and they really want you to go assault rifle on this entire sequence. How does everybody else play out this sequence? Do you use the assault rifle? Do you still do stealth?
I go in guns akimbo and just. So anyways, I just start blasting.
I start blasting. I use the shotgun pistol. I don't know what it's called, but I max it out early in the game on workbenches for this reason, just to go sham on these stupid soldiers.
Well, I found that, particularly in this playthrough, that one of the most effective ways for me to deal with this part of the game was probably the most horrifying. And I found Molotov cocktails to be really effective because you can lure them and they go, and then you throw Molotov and you can get a couple of them at once and then you just run past. And I was like, if this was really what was happening, you're in my way. I'm going to have to burn you to death real quick.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Similar
Pardon
to
me.
that, this is the first time because every time I encounter a bloater, I use the shrapnel bombs. And so they just go down. This is the first time where, I've never used the flamethrower. Let's use it on every human in the hospital.
You're a bad person.
The same thing. Yes.
It is
Molotovs and
terrifying.
flamethrower.
I just blasted through the hospital like I kept throwing things, waiting for them to come around the corner, and then I'd blast them in the face, like melt their faces off. It looked like the scene from Indiana Jones.
Oh,
And there's something and there's something about the sound that the flamethrower makes too, because it was the same like Molotov flamethrower the whole way through, because it was just most effective, and I was trying to get through it quickly because it's like Ellie's in trouble right now, and the sound that it makes is the same thing. You go around the corner and then you just
so
the sound that it makes is particularly upsetting. It was like out of a necessity sort of a thing. I'm a terrible person, but they're in the way.
For me, it was very Saving Private Ryan. Like when they storm the beach at the beginning of the movie and they pull out those flamethrowers to clear out the bunkers. And when the people come running out of the bunkers completely on fire and the screams they make, and that's horrifying. It's the worst. That's the worst way to go, is on fire, not able to breathe, in total pain.
This is the first time I've treated the humans in the hospital worse than I treated any other enemy the rest of the game.
And they were probably arguably some of the least deserving enemies.
I disagree.
Right?
I said
We'll get to
some.
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anti-Firefly. You heard it here first.
He
Okay,
likes to,
fine.
like,
You can be
body fire, making actual
anti-Firefly.
fireflies.
All right. So you plow your way through to the operating room. What does everybody do in this sequence? Do you shoot all three doctors?
I stabbed the assault rifle, and it was like 50 shots each. It was just unreal.
This is my last moment to use the rest of my ammo.
Yeah.
Tom, you empty your flamethrower, all of your bullets into these three doctors.
You just napalm the room and run out with Ellie
And Ellie's probably fine. She'll be okay.
She's fine.
So I love this sequence, not the killing doctors part, but I love it because knowing what's part of part 2, just the red door of it. And so I love doing it as Joel, knowing what part 2, all the flashbacks that Abby has there.
And Ellie.
Yeah, and Ellie.
We're creating the scenario by which Abby comes in and So I needed to make sure that her dad was full of as many bullets.
Really justify the whole entirety of part 2.
Then you watch the cutscene in part 2, and you're like, that's not how it happened.
That's
Flamethrower
not what
that guy.
happened.
Yeah.
That guy didn't have a face when I was done. Also didn't have a crotch.
We all
He
might be
just
terrible.
unloaded
people,
all
guys.
of your bullets into
Yeah.
his pelvis. Like,
And
What
I'm
can
not,
do for the nurses?
and I'm not even trying to I didn't even consider maybe I should shoot them a bunch of times. It was like one each. I had my pistol, pop, and I was done with it.
He John
Efficient.
Wicked it.
I was
Yeah.
being efficient. I John Wicked it.
I went above and beyond because I felt especially crossed by the Fireflies this playthrough. And I needed the Fireflies to understand that.
From the bullets to the face and crotch.
they felt my wrath, my disapproval
Not
of them on moral grounds.
Yeah,
right?
not only will this doctor not save humankind, but he also won't have any more progeny.
They won't be able to identify him.
There will be no more Abbeys. They will not save his seed and implant any more women. There will be none of him. This got weird. All right. I felt a lot of tension escaping the hospital because you don't have your guns. And it felt like audio wise, everybody was always right on you. Did anybody get caught leaving the hospital?
I got
least probably
caught
did.
one time because I ran to the wrong red light. I forgot to go off the side door and around when there's
Yeah.
that barricade of guys that have their back to you.
Amazingly, I did not get caught, unlike the first sequence in the game where I died like 17 times. But I did not get caught. But I felt bad because every corner I rounded, I felt like I was hitting Ellie's head into the wall.
Yeah, I did that once or twice.
Did anyone else experience that? I was like, I'm running past and I've got to make a sharp right. I feel like Ellie's head kept hitting the wall and I felt really guilty.
You're just waking up with a concussion. Sorry about that.
No, this is my bad. I'm saving your life though.
Yeah, greater good. So then we escape, we go down the elevator and we encounter Marlene for the first time. I need to point out, because the first time I played this game, I must have played over a long period of time. Also, I'm really bad at connecting story when it doesn't tell me what's going on. I didn't realize Marlene was the same character from the beginning of the game.
What?
I had
Just
so
happen to
many
have the
of
same
these-
name.
I didn't even realize that they had the same name. I didn't know. Okay. Because in my head, I never connected the dots because it's like, why would she give me Ellie and then suddenly be where I needed to go? Why couldn't she, how could that be the same person? Wouldn't she have just taken Ellie with her? I'm self-deprecating because I know I was stupid.
And you do find some of Marlene's journal entries that talk about how she was like, I should have just taken her with me. Why did I give her to these smugglers? She thought that she was giving Ellie the best chance by giving her to Joel. But then she leaves these notes to the effect of, everyone is looking at me like this is all my fault, why Ellie isn't here and all of this stuff. And so she blames herself, and the other people there blame her too. And so I think that might have added to the pressure of why Marlene was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's sacrifice Ellie to make a cure, because she's pressure from the people around her.
And even after everything has gone down, like when you finally encounter Marlene again, after you've killed everyone and escaped with Ellie, the stakes are probably so high for her because of that. You just killed everyone that Marlene knew, just about. And the fact that she's still in that moment tries to persuade you, like puts her gun down and everything to say, you can still do the right thing, Joel. Like, Marlene, he just napalmed the place. What do you mean you can still do the right thing? Don't put your gun down. Are you an idiot? I
know, Joel.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to motivate like why Marlene would still, after all of that, still try to persuade Joel to do the right thing rather than forcibly take Ellie's fate into her own hand.
So this is where she, if I were to guess, because there's a difference between him killing anybody between point A and B to get to Ellie. I think killing Marlene was different and worse because she was defenseless. And she sees Joel as this incredibly pragmatic person. And she still maybe thinks that maybe he'll let me go because he's pragmatic, because she's not directly in his way between point A and B. And that's when he says, come for her. He creates an excuse to take her out. That's my opinion. I think shooting Marlene is different and worse than all of the murders that came before that.
It's so much more personal with Marlene. right? And part of it is that there's a relationship there that Joel doesn't have with rando doctor and stranger soldier. Right? They're just in the way of him achieving a means to save Ellie. But Marlene has been there from the beginning of his journey with Ellie. There's something full circle about it. And that relationship that makes it so much more personal, makes it so much more painful when he kills Marlene. To me, you're right. Like the sin is greater there in that moment when he's faced with killing a defenseless Marlene. It feels that way to me anyway.
I think it's pretty obvious that Marlene underestimated how much they bonded with each other. And I think maybe that still led into her trying to reason with him because he's a very scary person. She probably thought that was her last resort, was reasoning with him and maybe still underestimating how much of a bond that truly was, and was maybe only just seeing his violent side as this is just who he is. But does that mean he necessarily cares for her?
Yes, a pragmatic person can be reasoned with. This Joel going from a pragmatic person to he could no longer be reasoned with, and she didn't understand that. We're going to circle back to wrap up the story. I love how they cut the car ride out of Salt Lake City, not knowing what decision that Joel made. Just very effective. It only lasts for 60 seconds, but that moment where you're questioning, like, did he do the right thing or wrong thing, gives you a moment to question what was the right thing and what was the wrong thing. He's already killed the Fireflies, taking out Marlene. He feels like he's already covered his bases with nobody's going to come after to save humanity because nobody can do it. And he still takes out Marlene. And you're left with these 30, 60 seconds of uncertainty. What did he do it? What did he not? What did you actually want to happen? I feel like that was what they accomplished with this.
That was so good. Yeah. Again, like an effective way of telling a whole bunch of story and getting you as the player to take it personally without them having to say anything or explicitly do anything. You sitting in that car seemingly by yourself for those 30 seconds, super effective. Yeah, because I was in my brain spinning through, well, what did I want to do in that moment that I didn't get to do because all of a sudden we jumped ahead. That back and forth storytelling and then showing Ellie in the backseat and then going back and seeing you shoot Marlene. That was some really good storytelling. Really good.
Mm-hmm. Then we get out of the car. We're within a few miles of Jackson, and we have our final conversation between Joel and Ellie. I am curious what everybody's thoughts are. Does Ellie believe Joel when he says that there was no saving humanity, that it was already over? Or does she accept the lie?
We've talked a lot about justifying the parts of the mission for the remake version. And this is another one of those moments where I feel like the remake really gets to shine, because when you play through The Last of Us, PS3 and PS4, you get this moment that it's all the same dialogue. It's the same everything. And there's a part of you that's just, wow, Joel just lied to her and she totally bought it. I wrote it down. Ellie stops him and she goes, swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true. And then Joel just looks her straight in the eyes and goes, I swear. And it's, and when you play it in the original version, Ellie just looks, okay. If you swear to me, that's okay. But then in the remake, there's this flicker in Ellie's eyes that almost looks like disappointment. I gave you a chance to be honest. There's part of her that really wants to believe Joel, but maybe doesn't. So I feel like in the remake version, it's a lot more ambiguous. There's a lot more room to be like, I don't know if she believed him. Maybe she didn't. But to me, it looks like she wants to believe him, but doesn't quite.
Yeah, there's this aspect of that little flicker to me was something's not adding up. If what Joel said was true, why was I prepped for surgery? Why was I in that situation? Why haven't I seen Marlene after the fact?
Why did we just leave without talking to anybody? Yeah,
exactly. So it's just the case. I want to believe you, but stuff's not adding up to how this, I think, naturally would have gone down.
And I love that you use the word disappointed, Eric. I mean, because that look in Ellie's eyes when after he says, I swear, and you can see her eyes kind of flicker a little bit blankly from side to side and then back up before she says, okay. I see all of that in that moment. To me, I got the same impression. Like she didn't just buy what Joel said. She knows things didn't add up. but she loves Joel at this point and she's accepted their relationship. She's taken a lot of crap from Joel up till now in their journey, and Joel's hidden a lot from her and he's hidden a lot about his life and his story. But we just saw in Salt Lake how he finally opened up about Sarah. They talk more openly about Sarah. And for him in this moment to not be honest with her, I think she's probably really disappointed. I think she finds it hurtful, but she finds a way to just accept it and say, okay, and move forward, even if it's disappointing, even if she doesn't fully believe him. Because I think she's also at a point in her relationship with Joel where she's seen this before. She's seen him conceal and hide, or at least not tell the whole truth. But I similarly felt that disappointment almost in her look right there. Just resigned to disappointment, but
It's interesting because just she doesn't let this go. This is lifting into the second game and between Joel and Ellie's relationship as well. So I just love, disappointment. I think you nailed it on the head, Eric. Of just she knows something's not right and she holds on to that.
I think she knows it's a lie. She doesn't know what Joel did, but it's a lie of convenience. It's a lie that she justifies. If he's telling me this, there's a reason and I'm going to go with it. And there has to be a moment between, maybe we'll find it in part 2 when we go back through and they do all the flashback scenes. There has to be a moment because she knows it's a lie. That's why she goes back to Salt Lake and that's where she discovers what happened. But there was a moment that she's decided, I'm not okay with him lying to me. But at this moment, she's okay with it because as a father figure to her, she knows that he is protecting her. In my opinion, this is a moment where it's, if you are my father, quote unquote, then it's almost like the lie proves to her that he is acting as her father proxy. And that's why she is okay with it. I guess we're tied together forever because I am worth that lie to you.
Moral of the story, if you love your children, lie to them.
Lie to them.
You don't know the bad things you tell. Yeah.
One thing with that, I think Ellie, probably assumes that Joel wanted the same goals that she did, of that he wanted to have a cure. I think that's why she accepts the lie here. Okay, maybe the cure wasn't possible. Maybe I wasn't the key for it. That's fine. Still seems a little fishy. But if he's telling me this lie, it's for a good reason. It's not purely selfish. I think there's this little, I think Ellie assumes a lot of Joel and what Joel's thinking that isn't necessarily true, if that makes sense. Or is that just a complete cluster of words that doesn't make any sense?
No, that makes sense. Yeah. This was another really effective moment to harken back to that disassociation we've been talking about. Because right after he says, I swear, and Ellie responds, okay, we cut to black and we get this high-pitched kind of dissonant drones. It's amazing how effective that ringing sound is before you get the credits, because it leaves a lot of things ambiguous. It's like giving you dissonance without giving you a bunch of cluster of pitches. It's just like that single high-pitched ring, which for people dealing with PTSD, for trauma survivors, there's that level 2 of disassociating when everything just shrinks to a single sound or shrinks to a single image around you, that they do in that moment with just the sound, black, and then that ringing sound, which I got chills this time getting that ringing sound. Because I think that also tells you volumes and volumes of story, and your mind is swimming with context without them having to spell it out for you. I think it's such an effective transition after you shoot Marlene and you just get this like trauma sound, that high pitched chef's kiss to that.
Yeah, at this point, Ellie doesn't know that the conclusion was that her life would have been betrayed for humanity. I wanted to go back to, I don't think we talked about it.
Terrible bedside manner by the doctor, not prepping your patient for surgery, not talking about the risks and what's going to happen. Get together as he's sad.
Talk about the Hippocratic oath, okay?
Yeah.
On football.
Yeah.
She was already knocked out. Yeah.
But the moment with the giraffes where she recalls all of the major moments in the journey, Tess and Sam and Henry and all that stuff, like it can't be for nothing. That's probably one of her most well acted moments, that and the final sequence where she's, in her head, she's stop lying to me. You tell me everything you said is true. Her character is left on this ambiguous note that really gets fleshed out in the part 2, which during this story, is it Sam where her character has decided that her life would be worth giving up for the greater good? Not that she's ever encountered that decision, not that she knows that's her decision, but that's where it locks in that in part 2, she needs to have been able to make that decision to feel value in her life until she finds something else. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay, let me put this another way. So we start in Boston. Would Joel, in the beginning of the story, have killed the fireflies for Ellie?
No.
No,
I think
Joel
Joel
would
would
have killed the fireflies for a lot of reasons.
I mean,
but
he would have
not for
killed
Ellie.
them for other reasons, probably, but Joel had no connection to Ellie right at the beginning.
And so he needed to, like, he, being a pragmatic person, wouldn't have intervened, in my opinion. Not that he believes in saving humanity. Maybe it's like, oh, that would be convenient if that happened. But he as a character at the beginning of the story wouldn't have made that decision because he wouldn't have made that imposition on Ellie's behalf. Similarly, would Ellie have given her life for the greater good for everybody to survive?
I might argue that she would. She didn't really have much else. She had Marlene, and that was it. And even then, Marlene kicks her to Joel and Tess.
This is where I disagree, because I think this is the point of the DLC where we talk with Riley, and Riley says we keep finding a reason to continue. It parallels perfectly with what Joel says. We keep finding a reason. They're similar speeches. We keep finding a reason, whereas Riley's is we fight for every second to spend with each other. I think Riley set up her character to say, no matter what, keep going, because these moments with other people is what gives us meaning. But that contradicts where her character arrives at the end of the story, where she would have given her life for everyone else, in my opinion. And so I want to ask, what is it during the story that catalyzes Joel to be a person that would take action on Ellie's behalf? And what is it about Ellie's story and the people that she encounters that leads her to the decision she would have made to give her life for humanity?
And I think Ellie pretty explicitly, just what she's talking about, we need to make this all worth it, talking about specific characters that have died, then also all the hundreds of people that you have murdered along the way. It's got to be worth it. But to Tommy's point, Tommy talking about how they murdered Shan and that he found a way to live with Maria and Jackson, and that was then worth it for him to go through all of that surviving. I think that was Ellie's outcome. Is I've done so many terrible, horrible things. No matter the cost of getting this done, I'm going to pay it because I have to make all of this worth it. All these bad things I've done and all these people that have died on my behalf.
This is where we really get into the interesting worldview. I think, like us talking about the moral philosophies behind this, and them discussing the pros and cons of various types of establishments and institutions. This is where it gets really interesting, because you see Ellie and Joel grapple with all of these different sociocultural implications at every single encounter with all these people. They've killed a bunch of people. And is your worldview that you can justify everything by making it worth it with one other deed or act? And for Ellie, if I can save other people's lives, it'll justify all of these terrible things we've done. It'll justify all the people who've died along the way that I've cared about. And for Joel, I mean, if you're really taking this, if it's all about survival, if it's all about taking care of the people you love, everything else be damned, nothing else matters, then in his worldview, of course you can justify all this. It was all worth it because you and I are still alive. We're still breathing. We're together. And so in a way, it does prop up what Riley had instilled in Ellie early on, was that we fight for all of these moments, and because we're together, it's worth it. But for Ellie, if what she really needs is a higher calling and a higher purpose, then all of this death doesn't mean anything. Why am I still surviving? Why are we still fighting? if it's not enough that you and I are alive, there's got to be more to it. But if there's nothing else, if survival is it, then you could argue that Joel's got his head on straight and Ellie's desire to save people is backwards. It's interesting because you're discussing like a different worldview, a different reason for being alive. And I think it creates a really interesting conversation to have.
If I can save people, I should. And then it's David's her next big moment where it says, I don't feel like my life has purpose. So that formula of I need to save people, also I hate my own life, leads her to the conclusion, okay.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Just cut right there.
What an epic conclusion.
Well, there. So anyone listening to just the audio, Shan put both of his thumbs up and there were fireworks on his screen.
Yeah, can we turn those features off? I gesticulate a
there's
lot.
It's a thing. It's a you thing because it doesn't.
It's a you thing. We can't do it.
But
Yeah.
I can't control this. I can control configurations on the computer. Anyway, so my argument is that the combination of where she starts from Riley to Sam plus David is I need to help as many people as I can, but also David made me feel like my own life doesn't have purpose. This is where the conclusion of that formula is that I would give my life to help other people because I don't want to live my own life. I also think that Joel's story, he sees Bill and he sees Bill alone to its worst conclusion. This is the consequences of living alone. You become embittered, hateful, and there's no point in life. And Bill demonstrated that. Tess, okay, we should go back to Tess. Tess does try to act as a surrogate for Joel being optimistic and hopeful because he's a pessimistic, pragmatic person. So he's using as a reason to go until he finds a different reason. All right, then Joel encounters Henry, and Henry shows the worst conclusion of if you care for somebody. So now we've seen Bill if you don't care, and Henry if you do, and the worst conclusions of both of those scenarios.
You also get Tommy then, who says family. Tommy reminds him and teaches him my purpose for surviving and justifying all the horrible things we did to survive is family.
Right. David's more of an Ellie story, but right. Do you think David had an impact on Joel's final decision other than that solidifies the moment where he's a father figure now?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think that's the main moment for Joel there. And I think that's the part where, and I talked about this in the previous episode, where the switch flips in his brain, where he initiates his ride or die protocol. This is Ellie, I'm locked in. It's all about you. I'll do whatever, you know? So I think that part of it, like David is much more of an Ellie story, but the very end of it, we get to see that little bit of Joel change. And then after that part of the story, Joel is a different character, I feel like, and the way he interacts with Ellie and the way he goes about the rest of the game.
So I'd argue all of these character moments, all these different people that they encounter, then gets Joel from a person who wouldn't kill all the fireflies to someone who would. I think the darkness of his past already makes him capable, but not that he would do it. And everything that he encountered along the way made him decide that he would do this for Ellie, especially when it locks in that he is her father figure after wanting to protect and heal her from the David encounter.
I think what's just interesting on Joel's situation, on his action, is it's not a question of can he do this? It's not a question of skill. It's just he actually chooses to or not to do it, which is interesting because I think a lot of characters in that situation, there's this kind of skill component on going apeshit crazy and killing 1,000 people. But Joel is like, okay, I've done this before. I've ran through and killed all these people before. Like when he's shooting the guards, I don't have time for this. I played this out before, similar to the torture scene with the map. It's just like, hey, I've done this before. Let's get the ball rolling. I'm going to do this.
That's his first rodeo.
Yeah, it's not his first rodeo. And so it's not like okay, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to do it? He already knows how he's going to do it. It's just, am I going to make this conscious decision to which side am I going to pick? Which trolley lever am I going to pull?
Yeah. So does anybody else have any thoughts about this final chapter or the story? And
writ large.
At the end of this game, after all is said and done and the credits start to roll, what's going through my head is just a cocktail of things. Like, I'm not mad at what Joel did. I'm disgusted that he could actually go through and kill all of these people and murder Marlene in cold blood. There's this part of me that when the credits start rolling, I feel totally appalled and grossed out by what I just did. I don't know if any of you experienced that, but that's how I felt. And yet at the same time, I know I'm looking over at Shan and I know he's going to just tear the Fireflies apart and say, no remorse. But me, I definitely felt remorse here. When the credits are rolling, I feel bad. I feel guilty for having lied to Ellie. And yet I feel like I'm not sure if it was all worth it. I'm thrilled because I love Joel and I love Ellie and they're alive. But honestly, when the credits start rolling, what's going through my mind, I feel a little guilty and I'm not sure. I feel unsure if it was all worth it in the end. That's where I'm at anyway.
I think it was, because just everyone all along the way, they were all taking away her innocence, and she's a child. He's the one person that was looking out for her and wanting to protect her innocence, and it's hard to watch little children have their innocence taken away. And I don't know. I'm on Joel's side. I did not feel a big ick at the end.
So similar to Luke, has during the credit sequence, the weight of everything hit me. Because all of a sudden, the people that we've killed are no longer just fodder in a video game. I start to actually really think of them, especially the doctors, even though I pumped 1,000 rounds into them. It's just,
especially the crotch.
Yeah, especially the crotch. No, but there's this thought of, oh my, like, it wasn't, there's a little bit of ick on not necessarily what they did, but just Joel's Eve and straight up lying to Ellie. This is a relationship that has been built for I think over a year at this point, right? And through all this turmoil and trauma, and he selfishly just lies to her. That's where
That's a
my
hard one to
comes in, is just, this is somebody who is important enough to you to go murder the entire world for, and you're so easily gonna just say, yeah, I lied to you, I swear by it.
That's how supervillains are born.
Well,
yeah.
So here's my thought on that is the same feelings that motivated Joel to kill all of those Fireflies are the same feelings that motivated him to lie to Ellie's face, right? Because he says, I need to keep Ellie in my life. And in between me and Ellie right now is a bunch of Fireflies. So I'm going to kill them all. And then once all the Fireflies are dead, they run away together. And he says, all right, I need to keep Ellie in my life. And if she finds out the truth, she might not be in my life anymore. So now the truth is what's in between him and Ellie. And so I think it's that same thing where he's adopted Ellie as his daughter and is, I can't lose you. And these are the things that I have to do to not lose you. And if it means that I have to look you in the eye and lie to your face, then that's what I'm going to do. It's just such an effective way to end the game. It's such a like Luke was talking about with that pitch right at the end of the game, and the screen goes black before the credits roll. And it just really, it gives you time to sit and think about what you as the player just did, via Joel. And I'm kind of in the middle. I don't know if I'm Team Joel and I don't know if I'm, Team Firefly, because it's this huge feeling of they had the key to saving literally every person. And Joel said, no, I need this person. And it's just like, but then I think about, I have 2 daughters. And I think about, well, if I was in Joel's shoes and there was a bunch of people in between me and they said, hey, we can save the human race, but we have to kill your daughter. I don't know what I would do there. So it's like, it's just Naughty Dog doing such an excellent job of moral gray areas, beautiful, beautiful storytelling that just makes you think and be like, I don't know what I would do.
So we have no ick with Emerlie. Then we have, okay, let's do
medium
what's your ick factor.
Medium
out of 10, what is your ick factor on what you do?
Ooh,
right
solid
I'm
7,
5.
like 8.
So you're a fence sitter.
I'm a fence sitter. I can't.
You're a
make up
man.
my mind.
You're a man of inaction.
Yep.
So
100%. I just stand there paralyzed forever.
When faced with the trolley problem, you would just let it take its course.
I'd
would
jump
not
off the
take
trolley.
action.
Yeah, I would just.
You would let the trolley make the decision for you.
I'd just leave the situation. Yeah.
All right. 5 out of 10. Everybody else?
7, 8.
on your ick factor?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
Tucker.
I think I'm gonna go. So overall, so what Joel did, probably like a 2 ick. The way Joel lies, like a 9 ick. So averaging
Yeah,
out,
that's
yeah. So yeah, it's
So
just
you don't feel bad about killing everybody. You just hate how he handled Ellie.
Yeah, I think just because
Fine
like
that he
for
killed
me,
everyone. I don't like how
Yeah.
he did it though.
yeah, no, it's more so like it's this relationship part of it. Like just like in a relationship where the entire basis is built on a lie. That's so hard. That's to me just so ick. That's why it's so high on there. It's so damaging in the long run, and we see that in part 2 a little bit. Just their strained relationship. But it's to me, Joel doesn't really care about Ellie. I think Ellie could be replaced with any 14-year-old girl to fill that daughter hole in his heart. In this moment, it's all It's all about Joel and protecting Joel's feelings. He has no regard for Ellie's feelings in this moment.
Okay, Emerlie, you indicated a 3 ick.
Okay, but I do like how Tucker broke it up into 2 different ratings on like how he handled it and stuff. So I would say probably around a 3 ick, but going into the second game, and when we'll have to talk about a separate time, but seeing the repercussions, that really made it more of an impact on me because it didn't affect me that much until later. And then those are it's not just fodder. Those are real people and they had their own stories and all of that. And that hit me harder later. And that didn't hit me right away.
All right, here's where I'm at. 0 ick. Literally a flat 0 ick. And a 1
Sociopath.
online. A 1
Don't
ick
see a
online.
path.
No.
Oof.
We
He
are going
hates
to
fireflies. Totally fine with murdering and lying to people. Everyone
Yep,
keep an
I
eye
am,
out for
yeah.
Shan. Yeah.
And he's Team David.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm Team David.
You never indicated that I was Team David. I'm anti-David. I think we had 2 people on Team David and everybody else. I don't know. There was some ambiguity. Yeah, so I'm going to have to get into that in the next bonus episode where we pretend to be armchair philosophers.
We're going to
But-
philosophize so hard.
Pre having a kid, I thought it was so hard and so edgy to say 10 out of 10 ick. This was wrong. He's the anti-hero. Post having a child, 100% that this is 0 ick for me. And I would have done the same, 100%. But lying, okay, killing Marlene, a 1 out of 10 ick. Because
She
I
would have
do
come
agree
after
that
him.
she would have come after him.
Phew.
Exactly. She would have.
You don't know that.
That
You
is
don't
kind of a
know
loose
that.
end.
No
Yeah,
one
You
Yeah,
do
does
not
not
know
say
that
that.
about
No
Marlene.
loose ends.
No loose ends. One about lying, because I do think that is a greater good in this situation. I think that it is protective, and that is the role that he is supposed to be as her father figure, even if it has negative consequences. But we're going to dig into that next time. So I want to thank everybody for listening to this rambling discussion about the Left Behind DLC and the final chapter of The Last of Us. Thank you for joining us for the extremely protracted way in which we talked about the entire game, but we have more content to come, and we will see you on our bonus episode about the ethical dilemma of The Last of Us.
This was such a fun game to
Shan,
talk
do
about,
it.
you guys.
Do thumbs up. Do it.
Do the thumbs
Do
up
it.
at the end. Give us some fireworks.
Yeah.
It's so
Come on.
random.
Hold your
Come
hands
on.
still. Hold your hands still. Do this. We can't end the episode till you do fireworks, Shan. Try again.
We got a
All right. Till
All
next
right, thank
time,
you.
I
Bye,
guess.
everybody.
We got the fireworks.
Bye.
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 Outro. Bleep-a-doof, bleep-a-deep, bloop-a-dee-blow.